Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I very welcome my friends and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. And welcome, welcome, welcome and take a listen to this.
Disney still wanted to be able to have Spider-Man in the MCU. Of course they do. Of course. Nobody doubts that. But instead of 5%, they wanted a 10 times bump in that to a complete 50-50 split, including co-production rights and co-financing rights, which essentially, if you understand that and look at the underlying things, takes Sony's controlling interest of their number one franchise away from them, and according to the report and deadline, would have given Disney the option for co-finance as well, not just the Spider-Man movies, but the other movies Sony wanted to do too, including Venom, Morbius, Craven, all that kind of stuff.
But I had read that Sony even went back and said, what about 70-30?
Actually, you just raised a good point. I forgot to mention that Sony did indeed go back
Sony
with
goes
several
back and
counter
says 70-30.
offers. Yes, they did.
So I was like, this helps everyone. But you pointed out something to me that I didn't quite understand, that I had to go back and read in that Deadline article. Deadline said that Sony revealed that Disney wanted control of all of their Spider-Man movies, all of their offshoot movies, that Disney would control 50% of all of their Spider-Verse. Now, even I, as much as I'm, like you said, a Disney fan, I'm like, that's absurd. I didn't realize they wanted 50% of everything. If you were to do that, as John pointed out, the studio executives who agreed to that deal would be fired the next day. You're losing control of your own franchise. Of course, that's what Disney wanted. They went in and they made a ludicrous offer. A ludicrous offer. Nobody could accept those terms.
Well. Yeah, I never did read totally the full Deadline article. Deadline know exactly what's going on. So let's really take it back. I mean, this is from the John Campea show. Sometimes I don't like what he's got to say, but he's spot on here because all the MCU bots, all the MCU stands are blaming Sony. But let's take it back to the original negotiations for the first deal when Sony and Disney decided that they would go into partnership with these Spider-Man films. So this, we're talking about the negotiations for Spider-Man Homecoming, right? Why did Disney just negotiate a 5% deal? It was a shit deal. Why did they agree to that? I'll tell you why all parties agreed really quickly. Because Disney were desperate to get Spider-Man and Sony had just come off of the collapse of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, so they wanted a successful picture. They knew Marvel Studios and Feige would give them that, would give them at least an $800 million to $1 billion dollar picture. So everyone was happy, and Disney probably thought, when we get to the next negotiations, they're going to be putty in our hands. So you've heard it here, and it's in the Deadline article. Not only did they want a 50-50 split, but they wanted a co-financing deal as well. And basically, they wanted to have rights over the other Sony Marvel properties. And this is the deal breaker. This is the moment that we know Sony are not to blame. Sony desperately wanted this deal to continue because Feige and MCU can give them over $1 billion a picture. They can guarantee that for them. So this is not Sony's fault. And they came back with a 70-30 split. That's very fair. Now, do Disney at least deserve a 50-50 split? Maybe. But here's the thing. Sony own the Spider-Man movie property. So you can't expect them to bend over and pull their trousers down. You just can't accept that. And it's Disney's fault from the very first deal. The 5% was shit from the very beginning, and they should have been tougher. But nobody was tougher because people were desperate to make, a Spider-Man film together. And that really is the problem. So basically, you look at this, and people can look at it in... Look, I know the Marvel stands, the Marvel bots, they're very biased towards Disney. It's fuck Sony, we're not buying a PS5. Look, you can do what you want. You cannot affect a company like Sony, whatever you think you're going to do. It's going to be very interesting what happens next. And apparently John Watts may not come back for the next movie with Sony. Okay, we have to look at it another way. It's Disney who were doing all the donkey work with these Spider-Man movies. They were making the movies, and Sony were financing them and making a big percentage of the profits. And you could say, yes, definitely an increase was fair. And I think 70-30, and don't forget that Disney have the merchandising rights as well. So I think 70-30 would have been very fair. At the end of the day, Sony do own the property. You know, they should make a dominant, more of a dominant profit than Disney. But Disney want to dominate everything. They want all Marvel's properties in one place. This is something Warner Brothers don't have to worry about because they bought DC Comics years ago and they own all the properties. So they don't have that problem, whatever you think about Warner Brothers. But it is really, really interesting. And I think, I mean, because I didn't read the whole Deadline article, and because I do these videos, because I'm on a YouTuber, that's very unprofessional of me. But it's interesting to hear John Campea talking about this, and the guy who works with him as well. Basically, Sony really wanted this deal, and at the end of the day, Disney was so greedy. They talk about being on the side of the fans, and Jeremy Renner's come out and kind of being abusing Sony as well. But of course, they're trying to utilise the fandom. They want the next Spider-Man film to fail because they're that kind of company. They wanted the DCEU to fail, and this is why they were utilising their supporters constantly. But Feige was coming out saying, I want both of the franchises to do well. I love DC like I love Marvel, blah, blah, blah. All bullshit. Meanwhile, stirring the pot, stirring these Marvel stands up to make sure the DCEU films didn't have the same success they did. So I think that audio I've just played you is very, very damning. This is not Sony's fault. Sony tried to be as accommodating as possible. The reason they have split, the reason Spider-Man is no longer part of the MCU is because Disney got greedy. There is not going to be further negotiations. Nothing's going to change unless Disney decide to be less greedy and accept the 70-30 split. They may decide and come back and do that. But there's another theory I've got here. Maybe Sony and Disney are playing us. Because Phase 4 is such an average, mediocre slate, maybe they're trying to stir up some excitement. Just imagine after all this, on Saturday when Disney and Feige are at the convention and they announce that they've decided to stay with Sony and Spider-Man will remain in the MCU. Imagine the adulation. Oh yeah, the excitement. So be aware we could actually be being played. But obviously my main focus is DC movies and DC TV shows and stuff like that. But this is Big Mouth. I can talk about anything that you want to talk about. I think this is an important subject and I will carry on making videos about this subject. So till next time, we'll speak again.